good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and greetings from Cancer Research Africa. I am Professor Folakemi Odedina, and I am serving as a guest chief scientific correspondent for Cancer Research Africa on this very special segment that focuses on how you can establish successful research scholarship. I am so excited because we've had really great presentations recorded for you, and it is really amazing to see the knowledge and the tips and the golden nuggets and all the presentations that is going to be coming your way. So today I have the pleasure of continuing and really talking a little bit more to you about establishing successful cancer research program, and I am going to share my presentation. Today, I am going to continue with the series that I started. I'm going to do a total of 3 segments or 3 to 4 segments for this special edition. And the last time, I believe that I talked about making your program director your BFF. We've gotten a lot of comments and a lot of questions about that particular segment, and people really asking me, is that really what you should be trying to do? Yes, I strongly believe that your program directors, they're right there to support you. They are right there to help you and make sure that you are successful, because you being successful means that they are also going to be successful. That has actually been one of our most popular segments so far. Today, I'm going to continue to talk about grant writing 101 and just kind of laying the foundation of what you want to think about when you want to do grant writing. This is really a cartoon that is a very funny cartoon in which people just sort of think that if they just write scientifically and just focus on just the science, that it is a foolproof formula for writing grant application. But I always say there is an art and there is a science to grant writing. That is what I say to all the early stage investigators that I mentor, as well as postdocs, as well as people within my lab program. The way you actually communicate is very critical, because communicating your thoughts, your ideas, and your science is a two-way. When you do communicate, it has to be received by the reviewers in a way that is easy for them to really be able to understand what you're trying to achieve, and to be able to assess whether your proposal is innovative or your proposal has a high impact, and there is going to be a real good return for the investment that is going to be made by the funding agency. So for Grant Writing 101, I'm going to really be talking about your idea and why you want to fund it. I'm also going to talk about the grant writing process and the rules that you need to kind of think about, right? So look at the cartoon. It's really, I love this cartoon because it says, my project is simply this. I want to find out once and for all whether there's any truth in the belief that money can buy happiness. So, really key way of trying to say, well, whatever you're trying to find out, is this going to be of good benefit to the research community, as well as of good benefit to really addressing the areas that you want to address and making an impact, whether you're doing bench to clinic, or whether you're doing translational into the community, or whether you're focused on policy research. It has to be something that is actually worth it. So let's talk about your idea and why you want it to be funded. First of all, when you're thinking about the ideas that you want to propose, it has to be innovative. And I think we touched a little bit about that. It does not mean that it's something new under the sun. It could be your methods that is innovative. It could be the population that you're focusing on is a population that has not been studied. It could be the statistical analysis that you are actually using that is innovative. But there has to be some relative novel to the research that you are proposing. Now, it could be that if it's something that is an evidence-based intervention and you're just replicating the work in the community, maybe it doesn't really have to have that high level goal of innovation, but it still needs to have some aspects of innovation. In addition, it needs to address an important problem that is important to the stakeholders that you are targeting. It needs to be realistic. Now, the realistic aspect is where a lot of new investigators actually make an error. They feel that if they can just say they can do it all, if they can just do a whole lot of things, that makes it something that might be attractive to the funding agencies. No, it has to be realistic. It has to be feasible. How much you can reasonably expect, how much you can reasonably do, Because if it's over ambitious, that means you can't complete it within the timeline that you need to complete it. It also has to be doable and it has to be measurable. Time-specific results. If you're going to be doing it in 1 year, can you complete it in 1 year? And it needs to be based on some realistic expectations on what you can actually complete. A successful idea will be recognized as a need. If a reviewer is reading your proposal, there should be that part that justifies what is the need for this grant. What particular area of gap are you trying to bridge? What particular area are you trying to fill? What level of impact are you trying to make? So it has to be a need that you can justify. It has to make an impact somewhere. The impact could be clinical practice, or the impact could be in the community. It could be public health, or it could be that it's just advancing scientific knowledge in an area. But the need, the impact, and then it should be focused with not too many specific aims. 3 to 4 specific aims is usually the norm. And it's not as if you're going to really propose 3 to 4 specific aims and then you have like about 10 or 12 sub aims under each one. No, it has to be parsimonious. Remember, it has to be something that you can reasonably complete within a particular point in time, right? So it needs to be focused, and you don't want too many aims. It needs to be well supported by existing literature. There's nothing worse than you proposing what has already been done in the literature and what has already been published in the literature. So it's very important that it needs to be supported by existing literature, and it needs to advance existing literature. And it has to be something that you and your team are capable of doing. So thinking about who you've assembled for that as research team, are they able to complete everything that you are proposing within your grant? So these are some of the questions that you really want to ask and the things that you want to know before you start writing your grant. Okay, so things that we're kind of thinking of: what gaps exist in the knowledge base? What do you know? What don't you know? Where is the knowledge base? What gap are you going to fill? That is one of the questions you need to ask yourself. What does the literature say about the significance of the problem at either the local, state, regional, national, or even international or global levels, right? So what do you know? What don't you know? What gap are you trying to fill? Is there evidence that this project will lead to other studies? Nobody wants to fund, or you don't want to spend your life doing a study that you feel that, okay, once it's done, what is the next step? Is there any evidence that whatever you're going to do will keep tracking you along your long term to really be able to make sustainable contributions in the literature? So what is the evidence that this project will lead to other study? What previous work has been done to meet the need? Was it effective? What can you learn from the previous work? Is it a great methodology? Was it something that they did that they did not do very well? Can you build on it? Can you make it better? Those are some of the kind of questions that you want to ask yourself. What will be the impact of the study? Are you able to clearly express the impact? What significant needs are you trying to meet? What is the current status of those needs? Have the needs been met? If the needs have been met, what are you doing the research? So you have to ask yourself those critical questions. Will this project help meet the needs that you have identified that needs to be met? What really needs to be done to be able to meet that need? And what would your research proposal or your research project, once you are able to achieve the aims, what would they do to be able to meet the needs that you have identified? What services or activities will be delivered? Who is going to do what? By whom? And is it possible to make some impact on the problem within the timeline that you have actually allocated to that particular research proposal, right? Those are the things that you want to think about your idea. That is what is going to help you to convince reviewers that your idea is worth funding. Now, once you are able to convince yourself about those things, the next part is the grant writing proposal itself. So when you think about the process, you have to think, is this a good idea? is this a good institutional fit, depending on which institution that you are in? Because it is very important that you are able to get institutional support and institutional resources. And the way you can get that is if your idea is a good institutional fit with where you are. Are you able to assemble a winning team? And note that the winning team does not have to be at your institution. You are allowed to have co-investigators. You can even have multiple principal investigators, or you can have consultants at other institutions within the community level. The most important thing is that you are able to bring together a winning team and assemble that winning team. Is this idea a match to what is being asked by the sponsor? You can have all this great idea, have institutional fit, has the best team. If it's not well aligned to what the sponsor wants, then it's not going to be something that they would like to sponsor. So you want to make sure that the idea that you have is well matched to that sponsor. And if it's not, are there other sponsors that are well matched to your idea? One of the things that I will critically, want to emphasize is do not force your idea into what the sponsor is asking. Or do not think that you can change from what you are comfortable doing into what is fundable. That is like really putting a square peg in a round hole. You want to make sure that this is something that you have the expertise to lead, and this is something that is a good match to that sponsor. That is why it is really good to be able to look at different agencies, because there might be an agency that is a better fit for your idea. Another reason why you need to think about talking to your program director, because that is one of the reasons why the program can tell you whether your idea is a good fit for that particular RFA. It does not mean that your idea is not a good idea, but you have to make sure that it's a good fit for that sponsor. We already talked about contacting the sponsor and contacting your program director. Read the guidelines. Read the guidelines again. Read the guidelines again. There is nothing worse than not being able to be familiar with the guidelines before you write a grant. The guidelines are purposefully developed to really be a key document to help you in being able to submit an effective and a successful grant. So make sure that you read the guidelines very well. Plan in detail, do not rush. I've seen people, they see an idea and it's in about 2 or 3 weeks and they want to quickly write it. I always say, plan in detail. Make sure that you are able to write a winning grant. There is nothing worse than writing a grant in a hurry and then your name is affiliated or your name is really attached to a bad grant that is not written well, that obviously it looks as if you rushed in writing it. So plan in detail, make sure that you take the time in planning. I'm always, I know a lot of people that will come to me and ask me to be involved in the grant, and I'll look at the timeline and I just say no. And it's like, no, we will do the heavy lifting. It does not matter whether you're doing the heavy lifting. I do not want my name on a grant that I know is impossible to write that grant within 2 weeks. I just simply don't want my name on it. So you want to kind of think about that you're able to plan in detail. Develop a good budget. We're going to have somebody to talk about budget. Develop a good budget from the plan. Get outside readers and editors to comment on your grant. There is nothing worse than if the grant is only your eyes, and even if you have collaborators, make sure that they're read it. Even once your collaborators are able to read it, if possible, and you have enough time, send it out to outside readers. Send it out to somebody that has never actually put an eye on it, because they are going to give you fresh pairs of eyes to be able to do that for you, right? So get outside readers and editors to comment on it. Check that everything fits into the guidelines before you submit. Check. I always, once I'm going for a grant, I always develop something that I call a cheat sheet. And the cheat sheet is really a summary of what is key and what is important in the grant guideline. And with that cheat sheet, I'm really able to address each and every aspect of what is important to that particular grant. So the process is very critical that you are able to go towards the process. Also, there are some things that you should consider before and during your grant writing. Verify that the match of your project is with agency's goals. I already talked about that. Look at the agency's goals. Look at that it's a good match for what you're trying to write. Do not force fit anything, because you will be out of your league if you're trying to force fit something that you do not have your experience on, or your team does not have experience on to be able to do. Make sure that you are able to effectively demonstrate the importance of your project. Assume that an uninformed but intelligent reader. So although the reviewers that you're going to get as really scientific reviewers in your area of expertise, it is not their job to fill in the gap for you. It is not their job to try to say, yes, I do understand, that you want to go from A to C, but you did not tell me about B. I, as a reviewer, I'm always going in with a fresh pair of eyes, and it's only what you put in your proposal that I am going to base my evaluation on. I am not going to fill the gap for you, because that is the fair way to review, is to make sure that what is being presented to me is what I'm basing my evaluation on. So although I might know, because of my expertise, I might know some things about that area, if you don't put it in your proposal, I will note it as a weakness, and then I would note it that it should have been added so that it will provide, real comprehensive information about your grant. Make sure that you have a detailed and well-justified research plan. Very key. This is the main thing that you have. How are you going to do what you plan to do? What is your methodology? What is your approach? It needs to be detailed. Follow the application instructions exactly. I have known people that have written grants, and those grants have been administratively withdrawn. So it just means you just spend months writing a grant, and the grant never made it. And when you submitted the grant, it got kicked back. And it got kicked back because you did not follow the instructions. And so it could be administratively withdrawn by the agency for you not following the instruction exactly the way that you should follow instructions. Another tip that you want to do, in the RFA, they usually would put in the review criteria. Before I submit any grant, when I'm writing a grant, I'll look at the review criteria and I ask myself, am I meeting the review criteria? Have I answered all the things that the reviewers are going to be looking for? That is very critical that you do that. So very important. Make sure that your abstract is well polished. Make sure that, I already mentioned this pre-submission review by other colleagues who can come in with fresh pairs of eyes and provide some information to you. Use proofreaders if you are not a good writer. But there's nothing worse than a reviewer reading a grant and at the back of your mind, you almost have to correct, do editorial review. That gets in the way, and that is not the bit putting your best foot forward. So just make sure that if English is not your first language, which is fine for most, because most funding agencies, especially in the United States, is based on English. Just have somebody who is good in the editorial to do proofreading for you, but still make sure that it's still scientifically rigorous. Write, rewrite, and rewrite. Review, rewrite, get feedback, rewrite, and make sure that everything that you have is very well written. So, going on to the rules, we've already covered your idea, and we talked about your idea has to be novel, your idea has to have impact, your idea has to be really meet great needs. Just talked about the grant writing process, then the rules. The rules has to be followed to a T. It's very critical that you know and you follow the rules. Like I said before, read the guidelines again, follow the guidelines to the letter. If you are unsure of the guidelines, ask the program officer. It is really, really important that you understand what you're writing and you understand the way that you're writing. It's very critical that you do that. All right. So that's it. Very short, straight to the point. One of our Grant 101 series for you. This is really one of the things that you kind of have to think about as you are writing your grant. There are processes. There's an art of writing the science. There's a science behind writing your proposal, and there's an art behind writing your proposal. And it's very important that you actually make your proposal to really be friendly to the people who are going to be reviewing your proposal. So if you have any questions, please feel free to send your questions to us. Again, this PowerPoint slide deck is going to be available to you. All you have to do is to subscribe to Cancer Research Africa, and you'll get a copy of the PowerPoint slide deck. Thanks for joining us. I am Professor Folakemi Odedina, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has at this particular point in time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Odedina, for sharing that very informative presentation with us. Now, I do have a couple of questions that I have to ask for you. Now, firstly, how long did it take you to realize exactly what the process of grant writing entails?
Great question. I think you really learn about the process of grant writing through writing grants, through ways in which, you write some, they're great, you write some, the feedback is not so great. And so this is one of the things that I really like about this segment. This segment is really bringing renowned world experts who have been very highly successful in writing grants. So for example, for me, I've been writing grants for almost 3 decades. And so what I'm sharing are things that I've learned over 3 decades. And now think about that. Think about all the other aspects that we're bringing. So it takes time. And I think what we're offering is a shortcut for those people who are now getting in the field, or those who are now really passionate about grant writing and establishing successful academic career. I think it's very important to listen to what the experts are saying so that you can learn, and then you will learn along the way yourself. But it does take time to be able to get that comfortable. I know what exactly the process is.
Yes, thank you so much for being honest about how it's taking you the process of over 3 decades to accumulate that list of most important things when it comes to the grant writing process. I also love the fact that you guys are presenting these PDF presentations to show people that, hey, this is a shortcut. You don't have to take 30 years to understand what it takes to the process of grant writing like it did for me and my peers. So we're going to help you out tremendously to kind of cut that time in half. And I honestly love that. I love when experts and researchers and scientists who have been in the game for decades can come to the younger generation rather and be like, hey, here's some shortcuts, here's some tips, instead of hoarding that and keeping that to themselves. I love that, because we all use that help.
Yeah, I think that it's very important. And I think, one of the things that, for those of us, especially for all my colleagues that are going to be here and talking about different areas of expertise, I think you have to think about the next generation of scientists, especially, for African cancer scientists. You have to think about, for us to build that capacity and for us to bring that capability, there are things that people have learned globally, and we are all in different environments. And those things that we've learned globally, I think is a good way to give back. And it's a good way to let people sort of see how this is helpful for them. There's no way that you really can know how to do it, except when you do it yourself. So even despite the fact that we are going through providing, key steps and key knowledge in this area, you can only learn by doing it and taking the steps. I'll give you an example. There was a time that I had done a workshop, a grant writing workshop in Nigeria, and it was actually at Covenant University, Nigeria. And one of the participants of the workshop, Professor Emeka Iweala, actually said that what he did when he was working on a World Bank grant was to go back to all those PowerPoints that we shared and plug in. If you want those PowerPoints, you can get PowerPoints. You only need to subscribe to Cancer Research Africa. And he said he just went back to the PowerPoint and he followed the PowerPoint to T, and they did receive the grant. So it's something that, that you just sort of have to discipline yourself on looking at what I can get and I can use to be able to be better in this area.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I love that example that you used. Now, my next question, I'm a little curious about how do you know, or how do you determine rather, a good range for a budget for a grant? I'm very curious about how that process works.
That is actually very interesting. Very interesting. First of all, the first step that you take is that I talked about really you making sure that you read the guidelines. So for the first step in the guidelines that they're going to tell you what are the budgets that is allowed and what budget is not allowed. And knowing that is very key. So once you know that and you know what you're allowed to ask for and you're not allowed to ask for, again, it takes time, it takes experience. There are people, for example, at some institutions that can help to help you figure out the budget. But you just kind of go down your research plan and your research methodology and ask yourself, what do I need? Number one, who are the members of my team? And for all the members of my team, what is the percentage release effort that they have to be released? So for example, I can say, I'm going to spend 20% of my time on this grant. So how much is 20% of my grant? That's what I asked for. And then there could be a staff that I would say, I really want this staff to work on this grant all the time. That is 100% of their time will be spent. And then I get that. And then you ask yourself other things. Do you need consultants? And how much would I pay for that consultant? Do I need community members? And how much do I pay those community members? Then you start asking yourself, do I need to buy equipment? Do I need to buy computer? Do I need to buy any special things? If I'm recruiting participants to participate in my project, do I need to give them honorarium to participate in my project? And how much is it? So you almost go through your methodology and you ask yourself, what is required or what do I need to go through this methodology for me to be able to put my budget together? And that's how you do it. Of course, we're going to bring somebody in who's going to talk a little bit about budget so you can get to know more about budget later on. But that is just a very brief way of thinking about budget.
Perfect. Thank you so much for breaking that down and explaining that really well for me. I have a little bit more knowledge of how you guys come up with the budget now. Now, lastly, my question is, now determining who you want to read over your grants, how do you go about choosing who you want to look over? Is it somebody who's working on the same exact grant as you, or do you go for people who you feel like, hey, I know they're really good at grant writing, so I need tips from them?
Yeah,
You go about.
so that's a great point. So once you write your grants, before you submit your grants and you really want to select people, they could be within your institution, they could be outside your institution, the people who can help review and give you feedback. A lot of times people are like, oh, I just want to play safe. I want to send it to my friend to review so that they're not so harsh for me. No, that is the time that you want somebody to be harsh on you,
Right.
Because you would rather have somebody who is very critical, who has very good keen eye, who has the expertise and the experience. So number one, they have to have the expertise in that particular area to review for you. Number two, it does not necessarily have to be your friend who would not be able to critique for you. You want somebody who will go through it and critique and give you very good feedback. Absolutely. Constructive feedback that will help you to be able to develop and to be able to make sure that it is better. So that is very important that you do that. And you should not be afraid, because guess what? I would rather have them tear apart the proposal at that time, and then I have to do it and do it very well, and then I submit it, and then them saying, oh, it looks perfect. And then it is torn apart by the reviewers, and then it's not a mess. I can't do anything about it. So yeah, so the expertise and somebody who is able to provide constructive criticism, and somebody make sure that they can get back within the timeline that you wanted. I am guilty, when people ask me, I am so overwhelmed sometimes, but I would tell them ahead of time that I'm really overwhelmed. I may not be able to get it back to you. In the meantime, I can help you find somebody else, or if you can wait, then I'll get back to you at the time that I can.
Perfect. I was just about to say, I'm sure you get asked a lot of times to read over grants, but you're so busy that I'm sure you feel bad. Like, I wish I could read over this, but I just have so much going on.
Unfortunately, my time is sort of very limited. But one of the things I'm good at is I have a very good network of scientists and even early stage investigators who are actually pretty good in reviewing. Might be a good, so I would definitely let you know, and I would suggest some other names for you to go to.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I just love the collaboration between researchers, scientists, doctors who've been in the game for decades and understudies, undergrad students, people who are coming in and starting afresh. I love the connection that you guys have. I love how you take care of them. You show them the way. That's truly how it should be in every career field. That's
Yeah.
really the key to success, is learning from the experts.
Absolutely. You really have it the nail on the head, especially when you're looking at people who might be coming from, low resource countries like Africa, or who might be coming from minoritized or marginalized communities within the high resource countries as well, or people who are just early stage in their career. I mean, I didn't get here just by getting here. I had other people that also helped me along the way. And sometimes you learn from people who helped you, or you learn from people who didn't help you. So it goes both ways, but
Right.
it's better to have people who you can collaborate with, and it's better to have people who can help you. So this is great. And I look forward to next steps. And again, kudos to Cancer Research Africa for putting together this special series on establishing successful research scholarship. And I really am delighted to see that quite a number of our colleagues are stepping up, and they're giving their time to be able to make sure that our African cancer scientist colleagues also, get from some of the experiences that we have across the world.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Professor Odedina, for being our guest chief correspondent, for making this series happen. And we're so excited to continue and have even more special guests have their presentations. As well, I do want to give a reminder, if you are interested in receiving these PDF files and you are a subscriber or you are not a subscriber, go ahead and subscribe, send a screenshot that you have subscribed, and then we will respond to your email and give you the PDF files. Our email is cancerresearchafrica@outlook.com. Thank you so much for watching. Professor Odedina, thank you again for your lovely presentation, for answering some questions for us. We will see you guys in the next video.